أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي قصرت عن رؤيته أبصار الناظرين وعجزت عن نعته أوهام الواصفين الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين أبي القاسم محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية فادخلي في عبادي وادخلي جنتي صدق الله العلي العظيم. Respected elderly brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. The verses that I recited are the last four verses from chapter number 89, Surah Fajr. We very briefly discussed in regards to these verses, explained the translation, and talked about the discussion of how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He reveals these verses, the two concepts of tafsir and tatbiq were mentioned. Without repeating anything what we had said, hopefully those things are still with you and it remains so that we can move forward with our discussions. We see that when you look at these last four verses, these are the verses that I'm sure you have heard many times before. As the concept that I'm mentioning is nothing new to you. We've always heard that Imam Hussein is referred to by this nafs mutma'inna. But for me, I thought always that this was just one ayah. Ya ayyatuhan nafsul mutma'inna irji'i ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiyya fadkhuli fi ibadi wadkhuli jannati. Up until I had the ability to actually look at these verses and read them and follow it myself, that I figured that these are actually four different ayat. And that's when we look at Quran as to why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has broken these verses into different parts. When the discussion is one, when kalam is one, the mafhum is one, the direction is one, then why it is broken off into pieces. For example, when I start the speech, and any speaker who begins their speech, they go slowly. And then once they get in the rhythm of their speech, then obviously they're flowing. It doesn't mean that they are lacking that rhythm initially. It's just that how you start off. You get ready, you warm up, and then eventually you get into your talk. Similarly, it is also appropriate that if I want to get something across to someone, I speak in a way that they're able to absorb, and they're able to grasp what is being said. So for example, announcements are done every day. But if the announcements were rushed, For example, they'll announce the program for the day of Ashur. The day of Ashur will be on Wednesday, October this. Program will begin with the Amal at so-and-so o'clock, 11 o'clock, followed by Salatul Dhuhr. We'll have a majlis of the day of the Ashur. We'll have Faqa Shikni. We'll have Salatul Maghriban. We'll have Sham Ghariba and Matam and so on and so forth. If this announcement, which is being done for the first time, was done, by the way, they'll announce it, so this is not how it's going to be, inshallah. You'll hear the announcement. But I'm sure it's going to be pretty much what I said. That if they were to say this, then some of the people might come up and say, oh, what time is the Amal? We didn't hear it properly. What time is the day majlis? What time is the Sham-e Ghariba majlis? People might come and ask this question over and over. And I get this a lot when we go to Hajj. That I had the privilege of taking a caravan for the 5 years and perform the Hajj Baitullah. That whenever we tell them something here before leaving, it's useless. Because when you arrive over there, they'll be asking the same exact thing. Maulana, how many rounds? Where do we start? Where do we pray? And it is important because they don't want to make a mistake. When it comes to our daily prayers, we can care less. If we make a mistake, that's fine. We'll correct it. But Hajj, you're spending all this money, all this energy to go over there and perform this Hajj, and then the repercussions of even messing it up, you're very, very careful. So you ask over and over and over again. So I found after a couple of years of conducting Hajj classes for our group that we won't have any classes. I mean, we'll have classes, but we'll talk about something other than the arkan of Hajj. We'll talk about the patience that you must portray, the difficulties over there, how you should control yourself, your anger and whatnot. Akhlaqi discussion, nothing to do with the arkan of Hajj. Why? Because over there we'll have to repeat them again. Why waste energy when we're going to have to do it again? The reason is because something which is we're not accustomed to hearing all the time, we want to get that thing in bits and pieces so that we can grasp that knowledge and contain it and retain it. So, for example, an announcement for Ashura Day, which everybody's interested in, they would want to know it. So they'll to reconfirm, they'll come and ask. And you say, we'll send out an email. Even then, people will ask. It is natural. Nothing wrong with it. So you tell things or you announce it slowly, bits and pieces, so that people understand. And then you repeat it over and over for the course of a week, for example. Start announcing from tonight, the day of Ashur, this program will happen. Or start announcing about fundraising, for example, so that people keep on hearing this over and over and over again. So there's no ambiguity, none whatsoever. Come to Quran. This is similar to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to do as well. That when you look at these 4 ayat, it seems like the discussion is one. Let me give you another example. If you were to look at Surah Fatiha, for example, these 7 ayat in Surah Fatiha, which are the most recited surah, because we recite it in every namaz. La salata illa bi Fatihatil Kitab. There's no namaz without Fatihatul Kitab. It's a must. So it's a must recitation. All of us, the first surah that our children learn is Surah Fatiha because they'll need it in their namaz. These are 7 ayat. Sab'a Matani is one of the names of it. But one discussion, it starts out by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Moves forward by declaring that there's no ma'bud except you. That we only worship you. We only seek assistance from you. Keep us on the right path. And reiterating the path of those who attained your pleasure, not the path of those who went astray and were misguided. Seems like one mawlu, one topic, but it's broken off in ayat by ayat by ayat. Guess what? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to read this Quran and understand it as well. This ayat is not, this surah or this Quran is not just there for qira'at, and forget about the translation and forget about the understanding. That's why on numerous occasions it says, أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ فِي الْقُرْآنِ أَفَلَا يَتَفَكَّرُونَ فِي الْقُرْآنِ. Do they not ponder over this book? Do they not contemplate over this book? This book is for contemplation. This book is not for any other purpose. Yes, you should beautify your recitation. Brother recites it over here. I enjoy that recitation. So that's a very good thing. You should be able to recite it properly. It's amazing that a person would be, would have a PhD in the most complex of the subjects, but would have difficult time reciting the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're smart enough to go ahead and accomplish that feat, but you have difficult time reciting this book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's amazing. Sometimes we see this. But the thing is, where foundation is laid. We pay so much attention letting our kids learn this book, which is a good thing. We hire a qari, online, Skype here and there. We get someone to make our kids read this Quran. They finish this Quran. But this is where the cutoff comes. They finish this Quran, that's our obligation, that's it. This child who finished Quran, and there's a race to finish this Quran. My child finished at this age. Oh, my child finished a year before that. And so we're as if we're competing with one another. If a child finishes Quran, let's say by the age of 8 or 9, usually is the case, by the time they're 14, they have forgotten this Quran. Because there was a gap that came in between. It is something which you must continue and make a constant effort. And once again, these all things come from what the children observe in the house. If they don't observe the recitation of Quran in the house, then they will not have any inclination, none whatsoever, to ever pick up this book and read it again. The importance of understanding and reading Quran could be understood with this riwayat, where our third Imam, Imam Hussein ibn Ali alayhi salatu wassalam, when a person by the name Abdul Rahman Sulami Salma, who was the teacher responsible for teaching Quran to Imam's son, don't be surprised. That happens. Imam's children were learning Quran from someone else. Because it's not that Imam couldn't do it or Imam didn't have time to do it, but this is just the norm. So he learned it from Abdul Rahman. And when Imam's son came home, Imam said, "What did you learn?" He recited Surah Fatiha. Imam called Abdul Rahman, and the riwayah says that Imam gave him 1,000 gold coins. And Imam, according to the riwayah, filled his mouth with yaqut and marjan. That much Imam gave for just what? The child had recited Surah Fatiha. And then when Abdul Rahman said, "This is too much," Imam said, "You can't comprehend the value of what you have taught my son. This is still not enough for what you have done and what you have taught to my son." So here we need to understand the importance of it. And when we give importance, you know how we give importance to other events in our lives? Make sure that you hold a ceremony for children when they begin reciting the Quran. Bismillah, name it that. When they finish, hold a celebration in the form of Ameen. Gives incentives to others to go ahead and do the similar thing. And this is where one of the riwayat of our Prophet says, خَيْرُكُمْ مَنْ تَعَلَّمَ الْقُرْآنَ وَعَلَّمَهُ. Best amongst you are those who learn Quran and then they teach it to others. Teaching part is also very important. So as parents, there are duties that is upon you. And one of the duties is that you teach your children Quran. Riwayat of Prophet says, Haqqul walade ila waliday, the right of a son or a daughter towards his parents, thalatha, 3 things. What is it? An yuhassina ismahu. Give him a good name. Even that we don't do a good job at. We go ahead and name him after something which is popular. Maulana, the name is from Quran. Yes, everything in Quran should not be the name of your child. There's Abu Lahab in Quran. You're going to go ahead and name your child Abu Lahab? There's Shaitan in Quran. You're going to name your child Shaitan? You hear these names. They show me, Maulana, this is the ayat. For example, there's a name, Warisha. Even in my family, there's a name Warisha for a girl. I said, where do you get this name from? Oh, it's an ayat of Quran. Ayat of Quran says, Warishatun. Wa in Arabic is and. Rishatun is what is being referred to, the cloth made of silk or whatever. They put the waw with Risha and they made the name out of it. Or you might hear a name, for example, for a girl, Abiha. Ask the Arabs. Abiha means what? Her father. This was a title of Janab Sayyida, Ummu Abiha, right? Mother of her father. This is how she treated him. This is how she took care of him. So she attained this title of Ummu Abiha. But we go ahead and name Abiha. So Ummu Abiha would be correct, but Abiha itself. But I'm just giving examples. There are many other names. At least these are some Islamic names. You say, where do we get these names from? It says, Sammu awladakum asmal anbiya. Give your children the names of Anbiya, their families, name of Ma'sumin, their families. That's the first right. Make sure you do a good job at it. Second is, yu'allimuhu al-kitab. Give him a good name. Second thing is what? Teach him the book. We think we've sent our kids to schools, best of the universities, UT this, UT that, and we're done. No, you have to make sure that you do ihtimam. Well, I'm spending all this money paying the tuition, then still you want me to teach something to my son and my daughter? Yes, this is your right. This is the right upon them. If you don't know, get someone to go ahead and teach them that. And lastly, yuzavvijuhu idha balagh. Get them married when they are old enough to get married, at their age of marriage. Inshallah, another time we'll talk about that. It's not our discussion. So we see how important yu'allimuhu al-kitab is. Teaching of the book. خَيْرُكُمْ مَنْ تَعَلَّمَ الْقُرْآنَ وَعَلَّمَهُ. Best amongst you is the one who learns Quran and then teaches it to others. This was just a little bit as far as Quran is concerned. We've been reciting these verses, and so I thought, just bring a little bit about Quran every single day. Going back to the ayah that we had recited. Ya ayyatuhan nafsul mutma'inna. We went in a little details of what mutma'inna is, what satisfaction is, how do we all are in demand of satisfaction. We're looking for satisfaction. And when we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He teaches us as to where do we find that eternal, permanent satisfaction. The same ayat of Quran, بَعْضُهُمْ يُفَسِّرْ بَعْض. Some of them do the tafsir of others, which teaches us, أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبِ. With the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the hearts are pleased. But then the discussion that we had also was the conflicts or contradictions. In this particular ayah, Allah says, with the dhikr of Allah, your hearts are at ease. But at another place in Quran, it says, إِذَا ذُكِرَ اللَّهُ وَجَلَتْ قُلُوبُهُم. When the dhikr of Allah is done, their hearts tremble. He said, that's a clear. At one point, your hearts are at ease. At one point, your hearts are what? Trembling. That's opposite of one another. Once again, do we have contradiction in the ayat of Quran? Yes, if you were to go ahead and do the tafsir bil-ra'i, you will find contradiction in Quran. But if you were to do tamassuk with the maktab of Ahlul Bayt, then you will find a perfect explanation of that. What is the perfect explanation? I'll need two examples to explain this to you. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Imagine a child. So one ayah says, with the dhikr of Allah, hearts are at ease. Another ayah said, with the dhikr of Allah, hearts are shaking. trembling. How do you put the parallel between the two of them? For example, a child who's walking down a dark alley but holding on to his father's hand. This child has no discomfort, none whatsoever. No worries, none whatsoever. Why? Because he has complete trust in his father. Nothing can happen to me. Father might be scared, but this child has no fear because he's got complete trust in his father. And therefore he's walking, without any fear and in his own world, whatever. That's one situation. When you look at it, you see the son is at ease. But at another instant, the same son is walking with the father, but the son right now is not feeling the same ease. Why? Because he had done something mischievous. Father had caught him. Now he's holding on to the same father's hand. A moment ago he was walking with him. His heart was at ease. A moment later he's walking with him. His heart is terribly trembling and shaking because father caught him doing something which was wrong. That's one example for the kids. That it could happen. You see a situation, but there would be different outcomes of it. A physician who's a cardiologist, who's done many heart surgeries, it's a walk in the park for him. You and I would be scared to death when we're going through this process. But for him, it's daily routine. He does surgeries every day. Another one, another bypass, another whatever. But this same physician is now asked to go ahead and perform this heart surgery on someone important. Let's say Ayatollah al-Udhma. Let's say Imam of our time. Let's say a president. Let's say a king. A personality who's very important. This cardiologist who's done tons of surgeries all his life, now for the first time his hands will be shaking. Just because who is Madde Muqabil. Just because who he's treating right now. Same is over here in this ayat. That when you are obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, إِذَا ذُكِرَ اللَّهِ, when you're obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبِ. But when you are disobedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, إِذَا ذُكِرَ اللَّهِ وَجَلَتْ قُلُوبُهُم. That's one way of looking at it. But even those who are obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even them, because of the fear of the grandeur and holiness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it brings trembling into their hearts. And how do you relate to it? Regardless of what language you speak, when you come to this Farsh Aza and the Masaib of Hussein is being recited, regardless of what language, your heart start to feel sad. Tears run down your eyes, your cheeks, because you have that effect and affectionate towards Imam Hussein. So that's one thing as far as itminan qalb is concerned. But the ayah says, Aqim as-salat li dhikri. Establish the prayer if you want to do my dhikr. That's the best possible way of doing the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is by establishment of the prayer. Now, this prayer is very important. I thought it would be nice if we focus a little bit on the importance of salat. Because salat definitely is a very integral part of our lives. It serves as that cleansing that we need every single day. And that's why it is prescribed 5 times a day. We combine it, make it 3 times, which is fine. But it's prescribed 5 times a day. But on that note, before I get into this, a lot of time people say, show me this in Quran. You tell them something, some fiqhi, mas'ala, right away they'll say, show this to me in Quran. As a rebuttal, you should ask them, do you pray 5 times a day? Say yes. Ask them this question. You can't even prove 2 rakat namaz from Quran. This book, which is Baina Yaday, which is amongst us, every time someone says, show this to me in Quran, where does it say this in Quran? Where does it say in Quran that we must do hijab? Although it does say in Quran on numerous occasions. Surah Nur talks about it. Where does it say in Quran that we must keep a beard? Where does it say in Quran that we must do this, we must not do this, we must do this, we must not do this? Not everything you'll find in Quran. Quran is not a book of tafsil. Quran just gives you ahkam generally, and then you go ahead and derive it from the ahadith of Masumin. Explanation is done there. And the best example for that is namaz, which no one has any doubt. Even the person who doesn't pray has no doubt that namaz is wajib. Give the example of namaz. You see, you can't even prove salat, 2 rakat salat from Quran. It doesn't say anywhere in Quran how to pray 2 rakat salat. It might mention the times of it, but doesn't say anywhere how to perform 2 rakat salat. Then you should recite Surah Fatiha first, then you recite another complete surah, then you go into ruku, then you go into sajda, then you do nothing. Where do we learn this? Our Prophet taught us this. So the sunnat of Rasulullah becomes just that very important. So I get ticked off sometimes when people say, show this to me in Quran. No, you won't find. We don't only have one source, brothers and sisters. We have multiple sources to derive the laws of Islam. Multiple sources. One of them is Quran. Second one is the sunnat of Rasul, the traditions of our Prophet and Imams. That which Imams said, qawli Imam. That which Imams did, fi'li Imam. That which taqreer Imam was done in front of Imams and they approved it. These are all hujjat for us. They're all ahkam for us. So amongst them is obviously the salat, which is just that very important. And it's prescribed 5 times a day for a reason. And the reason is so that every time there's a lapse in our life, during the daytime, 24 hours, we turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to go ahead and make this tawbah. Return to our Lord. The word tawbah literally means what? You know, returning, right? Ruju', going back. And that's why this hadith of our Prophet Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is actually to the point when he says, لو كان على باب or على دار أحدكم نهر واغتسل في كل يوم 5 مرات. That if there was a nahr outside your house, these days you have swimming pools, or there's a lake, wherever, you know, a body of water. If there was a nahr, river, lake, or whatever, where you can swim, and you were to jump into it 5 times a day, he said, أَيَّبْقَى فِي الْجَسَدِ مِنَ الدَّرَنَ شَيْءٌ. Will there be any physical impurity left on this person's body? The one who was to dip into water 5 times a day? I said, no, obviously not. Water is a purifying agent. You go inside water, you come out, that physical impurity is what? Is removed. Prophet said, Salat is similar. Salat is just like that nahr jari, that running water. That every time you stand up to perform the salat, if there was any impurity that had gotten onto your spiritual aspect of your life, the salat will remove that. When you stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala 5 times, the same way you were diving into this water 5 times, no impurity, physical impurity would remain on your body. Similarly, when you stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and prostrate in front of Him, He said none of the internal impurities will remain. So use the salat as that aspect as well. It's very important. But the thing is, the reason we don't find importance of it, and a lot of time people ask this question as to how do I concentrate in salat? We don't have that humility, this khudu and khushu when we're praying. It's because the things that we do throughout the day are running through our head. You know, if I was to ask anyone in the crowd, including myself, that can you tell me a 2 rakat salat that you have prayed in all of your life, where you have thought of nothing but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? I'm sure some of you have, but I will say I've never. But if you were to ask me, have I prayed a 2 rakat salat where I've thought of everything but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Yes, that happens occasionally, every time, every other day. Normally that's the case. We're praying and tons of things are passing by our heads. We don't know which salat is accepted. We don't know which one is accepted. And that is the reason when one of the stories of Imam Khomeini, you read, he said that I don't know about the salat in my entire life which one was accepted, but I know one which was definitely accepted. A person of the caliber of Imam Khomeini, who was arif, who was faqih, mystic, and who was alim, a scholar of his time, marja taqleed, rahbar inqilab, and so on and so forth. He's saying what? He said, I don't know about any of my salat that I prayed. Just imagine if he's saying that, then what happens to our salat? Except a 2 rakat namaz that I performed one day. Which one was it? He said, when they had arrested me from Qom and they were taking me to Tehran. And on the way, Qom and Tehran, Jadde, Qom and Tehran, it was time for namaz fajr. And obviously, I asked these guards who were sitting on my left and my right, that it's time for namaz. Can we stop and pray? And those who have visited Qom and Tehran, you've gone for ziyarah, you know that between Qom and Tehran, at that time at least, now there was nothing. There's this salt lake. Other than that, there wasn't really anything in between. And a lot of ulama were actually dropped into the salt lake. So Imam said, let me pray. They said, no, we don't have any ahkam that we can stop. We must take you to, wherever they were taking them in the custody. Imam said, look at me. I'm so old. You think I'm going to run off on you? All I ask, because salat, fajr time is very constrained. It's not like dhuhr, you have 5-6 hours that you can pray when you get home. We might get to Tehran and namaz will be qasr or qada. So let me get off and pray. He said they eventually let me pray. They stopped the car and I went ahead and prayed. Imam said the trouble that I had to go through to convince those people to let me pray 2 rakat namaz, I think that's the only salat that I'm sure that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepted. Disregarding all the prayers that he performed all in his life. Just imagine. So same thing goes for us. That a salat which is performed in jamaat, there's guarantee that the salat is accepted. Other salat, we don't know, praying at home. And therefore, realize this as well, that there is so much emphasis laid upon performing namaz in jamaat. Whenever you get a chance, even it is allowed for you to delay your namaz for the sake of jamaat. I'll give you an example. That Riwayah says, if 2 people pray jamaat, and you only need 2 people, it's namaz al-Jum'ah that you need 5, right? For a regular namaz, you just need 2 people, imam and mamum, that's it. Oh, by the way, when the discussion of Jum'ah has come, I don't know, alhamdulillah, you had an alim din, but you don't have, I don't know how Jum'ah happens over here or not, but if Jum'ah salat happens, a lot of time, many people who pray Jum'ah, they are unaware of these masail. So it's good that they learn it as well. That Salatul Jum'ah, in the absence of Imam, is still wajib, but it's wajib-e-ikhtiyari. That means you have a choice on the day of Friday to either pray Jum'ah or to pray Dhuhr. But it's not that obviously you can't omit either one, 2 or both of them. You have to pray one of the 2. But if you are able to make it to a place where Jum'ah is being offered and Imam, with all the sharait is leading the prayer and all of the conditions are fulfilled, then you should perform Salatul Jum'ah. There's more reward for it. And you'll make the niyat of wajib. And when you perform it with that niyat, Dhuhr is no longer wajib on you. Dhuhr becomes saqit. It's okay if you want to pray as a ihtiyat, but according to Ayatul Sistani, if you've performed Salatul Jum'ah with the conditions being fulfilled, then Salatul Dhuhr is saqit. It's no longer wajib upon you. A lot of time people make the niyat of sunnat or mustahab or this and that. No. You make the niyat, I pray 2 rakat Jum'ah, wajib qurbatan ilallah. Why? It's wajib ikhtiyari. You have the ikhtiyar and choice to either do Dhuhr or do Jum'ah. When you're present to perform Jum'ah, then you should go ahead and make the niyat of wajib. That's one thing. Because we have different types of wajibat. Wajib aini, that which is wajib only on yourself and no one else can perform it. Like the daily prayers. If you were to say, I'm not feeling well, can you pray Dhuhr on my behalf? No, you can't do that. You have to pray your own Dhuhr. It's called wajib aini. You have wajib kifai like salatul mayyat. For example, if there was a mayyat, it'll be wajib on every one of us. But if few of us got up and performed salatul mayyat, then it will no longer be wajib on the rest of us. It's called wajib kifai. Why? It was sufficient for some of us to go ahead and perform it. And so similarly, we have wajib ikhtiyari, with choice on Friday to either do this or do that. But Jummah is definitely preferable if it's being conducted, and Zohar will no longer be wajib. But when you pray Jum'ah with the niyat of wajib. So keep that in your mind. So that salat performed in this Jamaat is very important. I was talking about that Imam Khomeini said 2 rakat. I don't know about any other salat, but that 2 rakat was accepted. But there's another exception of salat, which is if you're performing it in Jama'at. If you get a chance to perform salat in Jama'at. It says if there are 2 people, the reward of the salat is 70 times. If there are 3 people, the reward is 150 times. If there are 4 people, the reward goes to 200 sometimes. If there are 5 people, the reward goes to 1,000 times. If there are 6 people, the reward multiplies into few thousand times, up until the riwayat gets to 10. If there are 10 people in Jama'at, the reward of this namaz is something which is innumerable. It cannot be counted. If all the angels were to come down and all the rivers and the body of water was to become ink, and if all the trees were to become pen, and if they wanted to write down the thawab of this salat where 10 people are standing in Jamaat, they will never be able to count it. The reward of that salat. You say, why 10? Do they not know the counting after 10? No. There's a reason. And I'll give you an example. Imagine a person who only has one hand, and even in that one hand, he only has one finger. There's very little that this man can do with that one finger. If he had 2, he'd be able to maybe pick up smaller objects. If he had 3, he can grab a pen and write something. If he had 4, he can grab onto something bigger. If he had 5, he can push, even heavier objects. If he had the other hand and all 5 fingers over there as well, all together being 10, there's nothing that this man or woman cannot do. No one in the world has ever complained, I wish I had 11 fingers. Or I had more fingers, I would have been able to do this and that. This was a plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The same way you need only 10 fingers to do whatever it is that you want to do in your life, you only need 10 people in Jamaat for it to have a reward of that which is not countable by even angels. Salawat biji Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I know it's running a little bit dry, but I'll try and make it as interesting as possible. That namaz, the reason we don't find that affection or that emotions in salat that our Masumin had. Imam Hussain gave his life for this salat. One of his companions reminded him on the day of Ashur, Imam, it's time of salat. Imam stopped the war and he performed salat. So the salat is something which Imam died for. He said, this is the reason we've come here for. Religion. And salat is the face of religion. It's amududdin. It's that if you have a tent, you have this central pillar in it. If you remove that central pillar, what happens? The whole tent collapses. Salat has that ability to keep this whole tent erected. So it's just that very important. But why don't we have that khudu and khushu in our salat? Why are we lacking it? Where do we get it from? All these different thoughts that come into our mind. Back in the day, Banu Umayyah, when someone would ask them, can you give me the accounts of the sales in the south? They said, let's perform 3 rakat namaz maghrib and I'll tell you afterwards. So while they'll pray 3 rakat maghrib, he will be calculating all of that, and after maghrib, he will be able to tell them. This was a common practice. While praying, they would be, doing all of their accounts. So that's what happens to us as well. We're not doing our accounts, but we're doing many other things while we're praying. Make ihtimam for the salat. Dedicate a room in your house if it's possible. And then don't rush towards it. Give priority to it. Go make dua while you're performing the wudu. Place the du'as on your, window or whatever, on the door. It's like, no, we can't put dua, Arabic in bathroom. No, you can put it, no problem. As long as you're trying to learn it. A lot of people get worried, there's Quran, you can't bring it into the bathroom. Yeah, you shouldn't bring Quran into the washroom. But to put this dua, there's nothing wrong with it. Because it's for learning purpose. Just place this dua. When you're washing your face, Allahumma bayyid wajhi, right? The day all the faces will be turning dark, oh Allah, turn my face bright. When you wash your right hand, there's a dua for it. When you wash your left hand, there's a dua for it. When you do masah, there's a dua for it. That way you have spent a few minutes performing this wudu. Not just quickly went and performed wudu, boom, you're out. And then when we get on the musalla, 2 rakat namaz is less than 2 minutes. Now take some time. This is an opportunity for you to speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hazrat Musa alayhi salatu wasalam was asked a simple question. وَمَا تِلْكَ بِيَمِينِكَ يَا Musa. Oh Musa, what do you hold in your hand? It's a simple question God is asking him. He had this asa, right? First of all, Allah had given it to him. Why would Allah be asking this question? That's another discussion. But Allah asks him this question. وَمَا تِلْكَ بِيَمِينِكَ يَا Musa. Simple answer would be what? In my hand, there's an asa, the one that you gave me, O Allah. And you know, when we are, and again, we ended up giving examples of kings and presidents and whatnot. If you're ever meeting a dignitary, they say, speak very little. Don't say too much. Just answer whatever is being asked. Don't go overboard. So same thing is over here. Oh Musa, Allah is asking you, what are you holding in your hand? First of all, Allah knows everything, but He's asking. All you should say is, I'm holding this asa in my hand. What is the response? هذا asaya أتوكأ عليها وأهش بها غنمي ولي مآرب أخرى. I missed some parts of the ayat. It was a lengthy answer that Hazrat Musa was giving. I have to miss some parts of the ayat. He said, oh Allah, I'm holding this asa which you have given to me. I run my, animals with it. I break leaves with it for them. I recline on it. And I have many other things that I do with this asa. Oh Musa. Simple question, simple answer. Why prolong? Why make a lengthy answer? He would give an answer. This is an opportunity for me to conversate with my Lord. I want to continue this conversation for as long as possible. I don't want to cut it short. Allah has spoken to me. I want to make sure that I keep on speaking back and forth with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You and I are given the same opportunity every single day, 5 times a day, to speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But because we don't realize the worth of it, we go through it very quickly. Prophet went to Mi'raj. He spoke with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that hadith Mi'raj. Prophet is being addressed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Oh Muhammad, oh Ahmad, do you know this? Oh Ahmad, do you know this? There's a whole conversation. Irshad al-Dailami narrates hadith Mi'raj. Prophet comes back. People say, oh Prophet, what did you do? He said, well, I'm going to Mi'raj. First of all, many did not believe, but those who did, they said, what did you see over there? What did you see over there? And then he narrates the whole thing. Kind of like, for example, I'm visiting Austin right now. I'll go back home. My family might ask, how is Austin? I'll tell them it's a very beautiful place. It's got, very scenic, the whole city is very scenic, which I was able to see today. It's got this, it's got that. They'll be like, okay, take us there as well. So I'll bring them next time, inshallah. So Prophet said, I saw this, I saw this, I saw this. People say, we want to go to Mi'raj as well. Prophet said, Allah has sent your Mi'raj over here. As-salatu mi'rajul mu'min. This namaz is your Mi'raj. What I did over there, I spoke to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You want Mi'raj? This salat is prescribed for you, so you can speak and conversate with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Salawat beji Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And so here we understand how we rush through this namaz. You said we give examples of ma'asumeen. We can't be compared with ma'asumeen. Ma'asumeen were ma'asumeen. When fourth Imam was told, your namaz is, you pray 1,000 rak'at and so on and so forth. They said, wait, if you had seen the salat of Ali ibn Abi Talib, how Ali used to pray and how I pray, you would forget how I pray if you had seen how Ali used to pray. So we can't give example because people will say, oh, we can't do what Masumin did. Although they were sent as human beings so that you and I can emulate and follow them. But nonetheless, I'll give you an example of non-Masum. There was a person by the name Abul Hasan Isfahani, Sheikh Abul Hasan Isfahani. He used to live in Khurasan, where our 8th Imam is buried. And he used to lead namaz in the haram of Imam Hussein, Imam Rada, rather. So back in the day, this is probably 100 years ago, haram was not as big as now what it is. Haram was probably even smaller than this hall right here, because obviously the expansion came on afterwards. That the mutawalli of the haram, one day he saw it was, it gets very cold in Mashhad, it snows there. It was a cold night. When he was leaving, he saw Sheikh Abul Hasan Isfahani performing namaz, praying. And when he left, he was in the state of ruku. He waited, but he was known for his lengthy ruku. He said, Sheikh knows the drill to lock the door on his way out. So I'll leave, inshallah, he'll lock it, and inshallah, I'll come back in the Fajr, I'll open it up. And because it was hot, it was cold, he brought, like it's used to call Bukhari, something to keep him warm. And he left. He said, I went home, it snowed that night. When I came back in the morning, half hour, 45 minutes before Fajr, so I can set up the, place for people to come and pray, I saw the door was still open. I was disappointed. I trusted the Sheikh that he will close it on his way out, but he left it open. To his surprise, that he said, when I walked in, it had snowed that night, a couple of inches. He said, I went in and I saw Sheikh was still in the form of ruku. And there were a couple of inches of snow sitting on his back. He said, I feared for the life of Sheikh as to, is he still alive? Or if he was dead, he would have fallen. So I'm sure he's still alive. But I was worried. So he said, it was time for namaz. I started saying the adhan. Sheikh stood up from his ruku, finished the salat, came and led the prayer, and he was all fine. So here is an example of Sheikh Abul Hasan Isfahani. He asked him later on. He was known for his lengthy ruku, and he was known for his lengthy sujood. Human beings like you and I, we're not asking you to spend all your night performing ruku, standing in the state of ruku. That's not what is being asked over here. This example was given so that we can understand that even Ghayr Masoom could have that humility and khudu to perform the salat. Why the salat is something that if salat is accepted, everything else is accepted. Awwalu ma su'ila, awwalu ma yuhasabu. The person would be asked, and hisab kitab will be done, is of the salat. فَإِذَا قُبِلَتْ قُبِلَ سَائِرُ أَمَلِهِ وَإِذَا رُجَّتْ رُدَّ عَلَيْهِ سَائِرُ أَمَلِهِ. If salat is accepted, everything else is accepted. If salat is rejected, everything else is rejected. He said, how is it possible for one action to be so important that everything else that I've done in my life relies on it? For example, we know many people who did a lot of charitable things, who are very good people, who did all this social services and whatnot, but they didn't used to pray. Are you telling us that this person is not going to get a reward for all the good deeds he did just because he didn't used to pray? We're not saying this ourselves. I'm just narrating this hadith, just showing the importance of salat, that if salat is accepted, everything else is accepted. Yeah, that doesn't make sense to me. I'll give you an example. Imagine you're driving down the road, and it was 25 miles per hour zone, and you were doing 35. Cop pulled you over. When he pulls you over, he comes around, knocks on the window. What is the first thing he says? First, he tells you what you're doing. Then he asks for your driver's license. You say, 1 second. You pull down, go down to your pocket, you pull out your passport. You say, no, give me your license. You go down, you pull out what? You pull out another card, a social security card. He said, no, driver's license. You go down and you pull out your credit card. You shouldn't do that, actually. He said, no, driver's license. You keep on pulling health card. All of these different cards, he's looking for only one card. and that is your driver's license. Your passport is equally important when you're traveling abroad at the airport. Your health card is equally important when you're, God forbid, at the hospital. Your social security card is equally important for many things. Your credit card is very important if you want to buy something. But here, all of these cards are rejected if you don't have your license. But if you're able to produce your license, all of these things are also accepted. Similar is the salat, which is the face of all the other ibadat. If you have this namaz with you, then you'll be able to enter through that door of paradise. Everything else that you have done will accompany you, but if you don't have the salat, everything else will be rejected alongside with it. Salawat biji Muhammad wa alayhi. And so important that when our sixth Imam was leaving this world, he was on his deathbed. He asked all of his family members to get together, and he gave this wasiyat. He said, "La yanalu shafa'atuna man istakhaffa bis salat." Our shafa'at will not reach out to that person, the one who takes this namaz lightly. What does it mean, lightly? Imagine it. Pay attention. Imam did not say the one who doesn't pray, because there's an ayat in Quran for those who don't pray. It says in Surah Muddassir, يَتَسَاءَلُونَ عَنِ الْمُجْرِمِينَ مَا سَلَكَكُمْ فِي سَقَرَ قَالُوا لَمْ نَكُ مِنَ الْمُصَلِّينَ. And this is not the Hyderabadi nako. لَمْ نَكُ مِنَ الْمُصَلِّينَ. The mujrimeen will be questioned that what happened that you ended up being in Saqar, in hell? The first answer will be what? لَمْ نَكُ مِنَ الْمُصَلِّينَ. We were not amongst those who used to pray. So there's an ayat in Quran for those who ended up in the hell. Imam is saying the one who takes namaz lightly will not receive our shafa'at. La yanalu shafa'atuna man istakhaffa bis salat. Why? Because shafa'at, if you think that you don't need the shafa'at of ma'asumeen, then that's fine. Don't pray. Imam says those who take salat lightly. What does that mean, taking a salat lightly? It's time for prayer, and you're giving priority to something else. While you can go ahead and pray. Yes, if you're stuck at work and you can't get out, that's one thing. That's a genuine reason. If you're driving and you can't stop, that's another genuine reason. If you fear something and you must get home, that's a genuine reason. But just the fact that salat time comes, you're watching something on TV, you let it go past, and when there's only a few minutes left, you go ahead and pray. That's taking the salat lightly. Imam says such individuals will not receive our shafa'at. Period. So I don't think I can emphasize more than what I have already done as far as this namaz is concerned. But the only way you'll have your children pray is if they were to see you pray at home. Maulana, my son doesn't pray. What do? Can't do anything. If he's at that age where he knows good and bad. Yeah, if they were young, then yes, you can give some nasihat to them. But if they're old already, then you can just, force this namaz onto them. They are doing what they have seen at homes. Have they seen you pray at home? Then they would be praying as well today. The fact that they didn't see you pay any attention towards salat, they don't have any attention towards salat either. We mentioned yesterday very briefly that when Hur had stopped the army of Imam Hussein, and in fact, when he arrived at the camp of Imam in Sharaf, Imam provided water. You know what Imam did? After this, it was time for namaz. Imam said to Hur, "Oh Hur, go ahead and pray. Let us pray, and you go ahead and pray with your own people." The reply of Hur was what? He said, "Oh Imam, with your wujud, you want us to pray separate? No, we're going to pray behind you." Imam Hussein, when he's leaving towards Maqtal, you know what he says to his sister? Ya ukhti la tansini fi salati al-layl. Oh my sister, do not forget me in your namaz al-shab, salatul layl. Imam has so much confidence in his sister that forget about namaz al-wajib. She will not even forget performing namaz al-shab, salatul layl. Even in that difficult time that she was going to go through to Kufa and Sham. Imam's army was stopped. Imam said to Hur, "Oh Hur, go ahead and pray." Imam knows how to deal with people. This is how Imam is dealing with the psychology and how to speak to individuals. Imam doesn't say these things to everyone. He only says to those whom he believes will have some sort of effect. In fact, Imam did 3 things with Hur that maybe was the reason that changed the fate of Hur. One, obviously, Imam provided water to him. Well, Imam would have provided water to everyone. But the way he provided water to him. Second, Imam said to Hur, go ahead and pray. Hur said, no, Imam, with your wujud, I can't go ahead and pray separate. I have to pray behind you. Third, Imam said to him, when he held the lagam and the rein of the horse, may your mother sit in your grief. I said that last night, right? And then the reply of Hur. If it was someone else, they would have given another reply. And there were people. Umar Saad, when Imam said to Umar Saad that forget about what was he promised. He was promised by Ibn Ziyad the city of Ray. He said, forget about the city. You won't even get to the, for example, the barley or gandum or jow, right? He said, well, if I won't eat, I'll eat rice over there, for example. He made a mockery of what Imam was saying. Imam was saying, forget the city. You won't even smell the crops of that city. He said, I won't eat that crop. I'll eat rice, for example. Imam knows where to say what. And who will have the ability to respond in the right manner. Hur has that ability. Imam said to him, may your mother sit in your grief. Hur says what? I can't repeat the same thing to you. Because you're the son of Fatmatul Zahra. You're the son of Fatmatul Zahra. I can't repeat the same words to you. But Imam was impacting Hur every step of the way. And I think that was the reason which led when eventually the day of Ashur comes. In fact, the night of Ashur comes. Some people say that the armies wanted to come and attack Imam Hussein's army. Imam said to Hazrat Abbas, go tell them, let us have this one more night so we can pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imam was not asking them to give them time. Imam was actually giving them more time to think about what they were doing. And that gave many such people like Hur opportunity to think over what they were about to do. What does Imam do night of Ashur? He spends the entire night performing the ibadat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the camps of Imam, you would hear the humming sound of the recitation of Quran. And that is why on the other camps, there were people such as Hur who were seeing as to what has happened to him. Those 3 things that Imam had done had impacted him. That he asked Umar Asad, are we really going to fight them tomorrow? He said, yes. By God, I will be the first one to throw an arrow towards the army of Hussein. We will definitely fight them. We will definitely crush them. Words of Umar Asad. Lanatullah alayhi. Hur is thinking about it. He said that I was sitting there and I saw myself between Jahannam and Jannat. I saw myself in between hell and paradise. He said on one side there was paradise. On the other side there was hell. And when I was leaving to join the army of Imam, some of my companions, some of my friends looked at me. They said, oh Hur, if anyone was to ask us who's the biggest warrior in all of Kufa, we would have said Hur. But what has happened to you? What has happened to your face, complexion, the whole body? Hur said, when I left the city of Kufa, I heard a noise, a voice that said to me, oh Hur, I give you basharat towards paradise. He said, I'm going to stop the grandson of Rasulullah. What's paradise in that? But now I understand what was happening. He said he makes his way towards the camp of Imam Hussein. Imam sees someone coming from far. Hur comes and throws himself onto the ground on the feet of Imam. He said, oh Imam, do I have the permission to be part of your army? Imam said, who is it? He said, this is Hur. It is Hur, the one who stopped you from going to Kufa. In fact, the one who stopped your path from going to wherever you wanted to go to. It is Hur who stopped water onto you. It is Hur who deprived your children and said they're saying al-atash and al-atash and al-atash. Imam, I'm the one who's the cause of all of these troubles to you. Is there any forgiveness written for me? Imam said, yes, O Hur. Your mother named you correct, Hur. Anta hurrun fid dunya wa fil akhirah. Your name has named you correctly. You are Hur. That means you're free in this world and you're free in the hereafter. When Hur had been embraced by Imam alayhi salatu wasalam, he asked Imam, oh Imam, give me the permission that I be the first one to sacrifice myself unto you. Imam is Mehman Nawaz. Hospitality of Imam Hussein does not permit. He said, oh Hur, you have just joined us. Let us have the ability and to show some hospitality, how we are Mehman Nawaz. He said, oh Hur, Imam said, oh Hur, let us greet you, let us treat you. He said, no Imam, of what I have done to you, I want to be the first one to go ahead and sacrifice myself. When he was speaking that way, Hur's son comes to him and said, oh father, oh Baba, let me go first so that Imam, you obey Imam as well. Hur prepares his son. His son goes towards the battlefield. He gets killed. He gets martyred. But before he died, he called upon his father, Ya Abati, Adrikni. Oh father, come for my help. Hur wanted to go towards Maqtal. Imam said, oh Hur, where are you going? He said, my young son is calling me. I should go ahead and do his nusrat. Imam said, you will not be able to bear the pain of the young son. You will not be able to handle the dying young son. Oh, Hur, stay back. I'll go in for you. Imam goes and brings the body of Hur's son back. I'm going to ask, oh Mawla, you went and you did not allow Hur to pick up the body of his young son. But later on, when Ali Akbar will go to the battlefield, ألا لعنة الله القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. Oh Allah, please accept our ibadah tonight. Oh Allah, we have committed a lot of sins. Please forgive our sins. Oh Allah, give us the ability to perform our salat the way it is supposed to be performed. Oh Allah, give us the ability to receive the intercession of Masumeen alayhi salatu wassalam. Oh Allah, give us the ability to follow the footsteps of Masumeen alayhi salatu wassalam. Oh Allah, hasten the zuhur of our weighted Imam. Make us amongst the helpers and the soldiers of Imam. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Matam Hussein.